and I've noticed it throughout this conversation, is you've brought up the history really, really a lot of different parts of Africa, of the different tribes in Africa. The Bantus, everything,
Bantus,
the Luos,
Nilots, Cushites, Semites,
and Africa has an extensive history, like relative to the United States. I mean, obviously there was Native Americans here for a long time, but the colonial history of the United States only goes back a couple hundred years. We were taught that in school, but the history of Africa is much more complex. It's much more layered. There's a lot has gone on. I'm wondering, where did you learn everything? Like, how much of it was in school? How much of it was from your family? How much of it was through your own individual study? Like, how did you gain your understanding? Since it seems like you have a really strong understanding of, like, oh, this language came down the Nile, and so how did you kind of put it all together? What's that process like?
You get to learn it through any way possible. You know, I'd like to say a lot of my learning is influenced by what was written, and sometimes it only favors the victors. You know, the victors write the history and stuff, and so they'll never concede to like a defeat, or, you know, concede like anything bad happened to them or anything like that. And so a lot of the way I might tell you these things, but it's because of a lot of influence from what I read or something like that. But also they are like the Luo traditions that are passed down to us from one generation to another, you know. Like,
so that would be what you learned from your grandmother.
From your grandmother. And that's how, you know, African traditional languages are, or used to be. I used to be, actually, that's the term, because things have changed and stuff. Because, you know, in the Western world, things are written down, you know. I'm like, you go out on a date and it's like, the first time I came here in the system, I went to a date and someone told me, oh, write me an email. I'm like, holy shit, what the hell? What's up with that? Write you an email? Or, you know, you go out on a date and you're like, hey, can I get your number or something? And someone tells you, oh, you can get my Twitter page. You're like, go to hell, you know? You know, so things are written, you know, sort of, but in African traditional language, basically, it's like passing down orally, and we lost a lot of history through that, you know, because if you, you know, in the generation that have passed, if like information was being passed down orally from one people to another, and basically there came like a drought or terrible disease or war, and, you know, ravaged, wiped these people out, then you lose all that history. And so we lost a lot of history that was being passed down orally, but still we have maintained some sort of ways in which our ancestors used to do miraculously or wherever, you know. And that also goes to the story of African Americans, going by what they've been through and stuff, you know. They came from Africa, but their ways and means and the music that they do, the way they do it, the drumming and instrumentals, even the way they speak, mostly influenced by Africa, you know. And even the way they cook, you know, it's Africa, because they're trying to stick. That's what their great-grandparents or ancestors taught them. And so it's being passed down from one generation to another. And same to even, you know, Western cultures. Yes, it's mostly written, but, you know, your granddad or your parent would tell you, oh, this is how the Irish show, this is how things used to be done and stuff like that. And so big time, that was like, you know, I learned a lot of things from my grandparents, you know, my parents. There's a way things are done, you know, in our culture. It's up to you to rebel. Or it's up to you to, you know, keep them and stuff, you know. And so there are other bad things in my culture, just like in any other culture, that I deem as bad, you know. This should stop, you know. But there also are the good things that, you know, I feel personally. But there also someone who likes, oh, you think that's bad? This is cool to me, you know. And so they keep on doing whatever they're doing. And so you'll always find all these segments of society, but oral tradition, big time. And then I would say there's just a spirit somewhere in the air, no matter, even if you're left alone, you're the only Luo left alone in this world. You're going to do things, you know, the spirit of the Luo way of life will just find you. And so I just think there's also, miraculously, people still stick to their roots. And they may not even have like information of like, you know, like how the ancestors used to do it and stuff like that. But I would concede and say a lot of things ISIS, especially Nihilas, Kushites, and all these things, a lot of things that, we've been told by those who wrote those books and stuff, but also a lot of research that has gone on to these places. Like, the cradle of mankind, where man came from, is East Africa, so there's lots of research which are also helping us to decipher, break down all these things and, bring everything into context. But there are also a lot of things that are unexplained, like, religious books, for instance, and other controversial sites where people always like, you left out the history of Africans, or you left out the history of this and these people, and so there's always a lot of contestations and stuff. But until we as Africans write our own books, or until we, try to explain possibly origins of how things are, or where we came from, or who we are, we might not have that information. But if we pump in more money and resources and research and try to bring this out, then yep, we could have more information. But we lost a lot as far as our own culture is concerned.
Yeah. There's a book about American history called A People's History of the United States. Do you know that one?
No.
It's good. It basically it tells American history through the lens of the victims.